A night janitor's life changes forever when she finds herself cleaning the office of one of the most powerful CEOs in the city. Little does she know, he's been watching her through security cameras, captivated by her brilliant mind as she solves complex problems on his whiteboard. For Maya, it was just another job to pay the bills, until fate introduced her to the one person who saw her hidden potential. Maya Rodriguez glanced at her watch and sighed. 11:30 p.m. Another late night cleaning the 50th floor of the Archer Industries headquarters in downtown Seattle. The rain pattered against the floor-to-ceiling windows, creating a soothing rhythm as she pushed her cleaning cart down the dimly lit hallway. At 28, this wasn't where she had imagined herself, with a master's degree in mathematics gathering dust while she scrubbed floors and emptied trash cans. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Maya had taken the night cleaning job 6 months ago, when her student loan payments became overwhelming. The pay was decent, the hours worked with her tutoring schedule, and most importantly, no one bothered her. She could think in peace as she worked, mentally solving complex equations that had fascinated her since childhood. Tonight, she was assigned to clean the executive floor, including the CEO's office. Maya had never been inside before. The executive spaces were usually handled by senior staff, but Diane, her supervisor, had called in sick, leaving Maya to cover. Remember, just clean the outer office, don't touch anything on his desk, Diane had warned over the phone. Mr. Archer is very particular about his space. Maya reached the end of the hallway where double wooden doors marked the entrance to the CEO's domain. She'd never met Alexander Archer, though his reputation preceded him. At 36, he had transformed his father's struggling tech company into one of the most innovative artificial intelligence firms in the country. Business magazines called him brilliant but ruthless, a man who demanded perfection and accepted nothing less. With a deep breath, Maya swiped her access card and pushed open the heavy door. The outer office was immaculate, with sleek furniture and abstract art adorning the walls, but it was the view that took her breath away. Seattle's skyline glittering through the rain, the Space Needle illuminated against the night sky. Maya quickly got to work, dusting surfaces and vacuuming the plush carpet. As she cleaned, she couldn't help but wonder about the man who worked here. What would it be like to have such power, such influence? To never worry about making rent or choosing between groceries and electricity. When she finished the outer office, Maya hesitated at the inner door. Diane's instructions had been clear. Don't enter the CEO's private office. But the door was slightly ajar, and curiosity got the better of her. Surely a quick peek wouldn't hurt. The CEO's office was twice the size of the outer room, dominated by a massive desk of polished black wood. One entire wall was covered with a whiteboard filled with equations and diagrams that Maya recognized as advanced AI algorithms. Without thinking, she moved closer, her eyes scanning the complex formulas. "That's not right," she murmured, spotting an error in one of the equations. It was a simple mistake, but one that would cause the entire system to fail. Without hesitation, Maya picked up a marker and made a small correction. Then another, and another. Soon, she was lost in the problem, writing furiously, her mind racing with possibilities. She didn't notice the time passing as she refined and expanded the algorithm, adding notes and suggestions in the margins. This was what she loved, what she was meant to do, not cleaning floors in the middle of the night. Finally satisfied, Maya stepped back to admire her work. The whiteboard was transformed, the algorithm elegantly simplified and improved. It was only then that the reality of what she'd done hit her. She had just altered the CEO's private work. She could be fired, or worse. Panicked, Maya grabbed a cloth to erase her additions, but stopped. The original algorithm had been flawed. Erasing her work would leave that error in place. Conflicted, she finally decided to take a photo of the board with her phone before wiping it clean. At least she could remember what she'd done, even if no one else would ever see it. As she turned to leave, a small red light in the corner of the ceiling caught her eye. A security camera. Maya's heart sank. Her impulsive action had been recorded. Would anyone review the footage? Would they recognize what she'd done? Too late to worry about it now. Maya quickly finished cleaning, her mind racing with worst-case scenarios. By the time she punched out at 6 a.m., she had convinced herself she would be fired by the end of the week. She trudged home to her small apartment, exhausted and anxious. The next night, Maya returned to work, expecting to be called into the security office. But nothing happened. Her shift passed uneventfully, and the executive floor wasn't on her cleaning schedule. Maybe no one had noticed after all. 3 days later, Maya was back on the executive floor. With trepidation, she approached the CEO's office, half expecting to find it locked to her, but her access card still worked. When she entered, everything looked the same, except the whiteboard. It was filled with new equations, even more complex than before. And at the bottom, written in red marker, "To the cleaning person who corrected my algorithm, continue." Maya stared at the message, her heart pounding. Someone had seen her work and wanted more. Was it a trap or an opportunity? Either way, the temptation was too great to resist. For the next 2 hours, Maya worked on the new problem, losing herself in the elegant dance of numbers and logic. When she finished, she stepped back, satisfied with her solution. This time, she didn't try to erase her work. Instead, she added a small note at the bottom. "Happy to help." This strange collaboration continued for weeks. Each time Maya cleaned the office, she would find a new problem on the board, solve it, and leave her own notes. Sometimes, she proposed alternative approaches or questioned assumptions in the original work. It became the highlight of her week, a secret intellectual partnership with an unknown colleague. What Maya didn't know was that Alexander Archer himself was watching. From his home office, he had access to all the security cameras in the building. He had initially checked the footage to find out who had altered his work, expecting to catch an overconfident junior engineer. Instead, he found a cleaning woman with an extraordinary mind. Night after night, he observed her working through his most challenging problems, her expression intense as she mutated and improved his algorithms. Who was this woman? And why was she cleaning offices instead of designing AI systems? Alexander decided to find out. He arranged to be working late on a night when she was scheduled to clean his floor. He waited in his private office, the door closed, watching through the security feed as she entered the outer office. Maya moved efficiently through her cleaning routine, her mind already on the whiteboard problem she hoped to find. When she finished, she approached the inner office door, then froze when she saw light spilling from beneath it. Someone was there. For a moment, she considered leaving, but curiosity won out. She knocked softly. "Come in," a deep voice called. Maya pushed the door open slowly. A man stood by the windows, his back to her, looking out at the city. Even from behind, she recognized him from company photos, Alexander Archer himself. "I'm sorry to disturb you, Mr. Archer," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I can come back later." Alexander turned, his piercing blue eyes studying her with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. He was taller than she expected, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit, despite the late hour. His dark hair was slightly disheveled, as if he'd been running his hands through it while thinking. "Maya Rodriguez," he said, surprising her with knowledge of her name. "The mathematician who's been solving my equations." Maya's eyes widened. "How did you—" "Security cameras," he said, gesturing to the corner of the ceiling. "I've been watching you work for weeks now." Heat rushed to Maya's face. "I'm sorry for overstepping. I shouldn't have touched your work. If you want to fire me, I understand." Alexander's expression remained unreadable. "Fire you? Why would I fire the person who found a critical flaw in our flagship AI model? A flaw that would have cost us millions if it had gone into production? You're not angry?" Maya asked, confused. Curious would be a better word. He moved to the whiteboard, scanning her latest work. "You have a unique approach to these problems. Intuitive, yet mathematically rigorous. Where did you study?" "Stanford," Maya replied, still wary. "Master's in applied mathematics. I was working on my PhD when my mother got sick. I had to drop out to care for her." Alexander nodded slowly. "And now you clean offices." The way he said it, not condescending but genuinely perplexed, made Maya stand a little straighter. "It pays the bills while I figure out my next steps. The job market for mathematicians without PhDs isn't exactly booming." "Perhaps not," Alexander agreed, "but I'm not interested in your credentials." I'm interested in your mind. He tapped the whiteboard. This solution. It's elegant. Better than what my team of PhDs came up with. Maya couldn't help the small smile that tugged at her lips. The standard approach was too computationally expensive. I just found a shortcut. A shortcut that could revolutionize our entire processing framework. Alexander moved closer, his eyes never leaving her face. I have a proposition for you, Ms. Rodriguez. Maya. She corrected automatically, then bit her lip. Sorry. Maya, he repeated, and something about the way he said her name sent a shiver down her spine. I want to offer you a job. Not cleaning offices. Working with our AI development team. Maya blinked, certain she had misheard. You want to hire me? But you don't know anything about me. I know enough, Alexander said. I know you're brilliant. I know you see solutions where others see only problems. And I know talent when I see it, regardless of what package it comes in. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Maya's mind raced. Was this really happening? What exactly would this job entail? Initially, consulting on our current projects. If that works out, a permanent position as a research mathematician. The salary would be significantly more than you're making now. He named a figure that made Maya's knees weak. That was more than she would have made even with her PhD. Why? She asked, unable to keep the suspicion from her voice. Why would you offer this to someone you've only seen through security cameras? Alexander's expression softened slightly. Because in business, finding the right person for the right role is everything. And you, Maya Rodriguez, are exactly the right person for this role. He paused. Plus, it would be a shame to waste that mind on toilet brushes and vacuum cleaners. I need time to think about it, Maya said, though everything in her wanted to say yes immediately. Of course. Alexander reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card. My direct number. Call me when you've decided. Maya took the card, their fingers brushing briefly. A jolt of something unexpected passed between them, making her pull back quickly. Thank you, Mr. Archer. Alexander, he corrected, a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. If we're going to work together, we should be on a first-name basis. The next morning, Maya sat at her small kitchen table, staring at Alexander's business card. The opportunity was incredible. A chance to return to the field she loved, to use her mind instead of her hands to earn a living. But something about it felt too good to be true. Why would Alexander Archer, CEO of a billion-dollar company, personally offer a job to a cleaning woman? She called her best friend, Elena, for advice. He's been watching you through security cameras? Elena asked, her voice tinged with concern. That's a little creepy, Maya. It sounds worse than it is, Maya defended, though she'd had the same thought. He was just curious about who was solving his equations. And now he wants to hire you. Just like that. He said I have the right mind for the job. Elena sighed. Just be careful, okay? Men like that, rich, powerful. They're used to getting what they want. Maya assured her friend she would be cautious. But after hanging up, she found herself remembering the intensity in Alexander's blue eyes, the way he'd spoken about her mind with such respect. No one had looked at her like that since her professors at Stanford, like she was valuable, like her thoughts mattered. 2 days later, Maya called the number on the card. Alexander answered on the second ring, as if he'd been waiting for her call. I'd like to accept your offer, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. But I have conditions. There was a pause, then a low chuckle. I'm listening. I want a 3-month trial period. If it doesn't work out, I want a good recommendation for another position. And I want to finish my PhD eventually. Done, Alexander replied without hesitation. When can you start? I need to give notice. I'll take care of that, he interrupted. Come to my office tomorrow at 9 a.m. We'll handle the paperwork then. The next morning, Maya stood in front of her closet, realizing she had nothing appropriate to wear to an executive office. She finally settled on her one interview suit, a bit outdated, but professional enough. She pulled her long, dark hair into a neat bun and applied minimal makeup, trying to look the part of a corporate mathematician rather than a night janitor. When she arrived at Archer Industries, the security guard who had greeted her every night for 6 months didn't recognize her at first. "Maya, is that you?" he asked, peering at her visitor's badge. "What are you doing here during daylight hours?" "New job," she replied with a nervous smile. "I've been reassigned." The elevator ride to the 50th floor felt different in the morning light. The hallways bustled with activity, people in expensive suits hurrying from one meeting to another. Maya felt out of place, an imposter in her cheap suit and scuffed shoes. Alexander's assistant, a poised woman in her 40s, greeted Maya with curious eyes. "Mr. Archer is expecting you. Go right in." Alexander's office looked different in daylight, less intimate, more imposing. He stood as she entered, coming around his desk to greet her. "Maya," he said, extending his hand. "Welcome to your first day." His hand was warm and firm around hers, the handshake lingering a moment longer than necessary. Maya noticed how his suit matched his eyes, how his presence seemed to fill the room. "Thank you for this opportunity," she said formally, withdrawing her hand. "I won't let you down. I know you won't." He gestured to a stack of papers on his desk. "Standard employment contract. Take your time reading it." The contract was generous, more than generous. The salary was even higher than what he'd initially mentioned, with bonuses, stock options, and educational benefits that would cover her PhD program. Maya read every page carefully, looking for the catch, but found none. "This looks amazing," she admitted, finally looking up. "Too amazing, honestly. Why are you doing this for me?" Alexander considered her for a moment, his expression thoughtful. "Have you heard of Katherine Johnson?" Maya nodded. "Of course. She was a mathematician at NASA. Her calculations were crucial to the early space program. NASA almost missed out on her brilliance because of preconceptions about who could be a mathematician. I refused to make the same mistake." He leaned against his desk. "Talent is rare, Maya. When I find it, I secure it, regardless of its packaging." His words were professional, but something in his gaze made Maya's heart beat faster. She looked down at the contract again, gathering her thoughts. "Where will I be working?" "Initially, with me," Alexander replied. "I want to see how our minds work together before integrating you into the team." Maya signed the contract, feeling as if she were stepping off a cliff without knowing what lay below. But what choice did she have? This was the opportunity of a lifetime. The first week was a whirlwind. Alexander set her up in a small office adjacent to his, with a computer system more powerful than any Maya had ever used. He gave her access to the company's current AI projects and asked for her input on everything from algorithm efficiency to ethical implementation. Maya threw herself into the work, often staying late into the evening. Sometimes Alexander would join her, his jacket discarded, sleeves rolled up as they debated approaches to particularly thorny problems. In those moments, the power imbalance between them seemed to dissolve. They were just two minds engaged in intellectual battle, and Maya held her own. What surprised her most was how much Alexander valued her perspective. He listened when she spoke, considered her critiques, and implemented her suggestions. It was intoxicating to be taken so seriously. By the second week, rumors were circulating about who she was and how she'd gotten the position. Maya overheard whispers in the break room. "She came out of nowhere. I heard she was his cleaning lady." "No way. She must be cleaning something else to get that office." The insinuations stung, but Maya tried to ignore them. She was here because of her mind, not because of any inappropriate relationship with the CEO. Still, she couldn't help noticing how Alexander looked at her sometimes when he thought she wasn't aware, with an intensity that wasn't entirely professional. One evening, as they worked late on a particularly challenging problem, Alexander ordered dinner for them both. They sat in his office, surrounded by whiteboards covered in equations, eating Thai food from cardboard containers. "Tell me about yourself," Alexander said, breaking their usual pattern of work-focused conversation. Not the mathematician, the woman. Maya hesitated, unused to sharing personal details. "There's not much to tell. I grew up in New Mexico. My father was a high school math teacher, my mother a nurse. I was always good with numbers." "Good enough for Stanford," Alexander noted. "That takes more than just being good with numbers." Maya shrugged. "I was lucky. I had parents who encouraged me, teachers who challenged me. Not everyone has that." "And what happened to your mother? You mentioned she became ill." "Early onset Alzheimer's," Maya replied, the familiar ache returning. She was diagnosed when I was in my second year of the PhD program. My father had died the year before, so there was no one else to care for her. Alexander's expression softened. That must have been difficult. It was. Is. Maya corrected herself. She's in a care facility now. The good days are becoming fewer, but she still knows me most of the time. That's why you took the cleaning job? To pay for her care? Maya nodded. Health insurance only covers so much. Between her care and my student loans. She trailed off, uncomfortable discussing financial struggles with a billionaire. Alexander was quiet for a moment. You gave up your future for her. I paused it. Maya corrected. There's a difference. And now? Now I've been given a second chance. She looked directly at him, though I'm still not entirely sure why. Alexander set down his food, his gaze intense. Because in my entire career, I've never met anyone who thinks the way you do. Because watching you solve problems is like watching a master artist at work. Because... He stopped abruptly, as if catching himself about to say too much. Maya's heart pounded in her chest. There was something happening between them, something beyond professional appreciation. She could feel it in the air, electric and dangerous. I should go, she said softly, gathering her things. It's getting late. Alexander didn't try to stop her, but as she reached the door, he called her name. Maya. She turned. I'm glad you took that photo of the whiteboard that first night, he said. And I'm glad I decided to check the security footage. Maya smiled despite herself. So am I. As she walked to the elevator, Maya wondered what she was getting herself into. This job was everything she'd ever wanted professionally, but the way Alexander looked at her, the way her skin tingled when he was near, that was something she hadn't anticipated, something that both thrilled and terrified her. What she didn't know was that Alexander was still watching her through the security cameras, following her progress to the elevator, unable to tear his eyes away from the woman who had walked into his life by chance and was now becoming essential to it in ways neither of them had expected. Over the next 3 weeks, Maya settled into her new role at Archer Industries. Her small office became a sanctuary of sorts, filled with whiteboards and computational problems that challenged and excited her. Most days, she worked directly with Alexander, their minds in perfect sync as they refined the company's AI algorithms. The transition from night janitor to research mathematician happened so quickly that Maya sometimes felt she was living someone else's life. Your solution to the neural network optimization problem saved us months of development time, Alexander told her one afternoon as they reviewed the latest test results. The team is implementing your approach across all our platforms. Maya couldn't help the flush of pride that warmed her cheeks. It was just a matter of looking at the problem differently. That's exactly why I hired you, Alexander said, his blue eyes intent on her face. You see things differently. These moments of professional validation were frequent, but so were the uncomfortable interactions with other employees. Many of the engineers and developers viewed her with suspicion, especially when they learned of her unconventional path to the company. Don't let them bother you, Alexander advised when he noticed her discomfort at a team meeting where several colleagues had pointedly ignored her contributions. They're threatened because you're brilliant, and they know it. After the meeting, he asked her to stay behind in the conference room, when everyone else had left. He closed the door and leaned against it, his expression serious. There's an industry conference in San Francisco next week, he said. I'd like you to accompany me. Maya blinked in surprise. Me? Wouldn't someone from the executive team be more appropriate? You're the one who developed the algorithm we're showcasing, Alexander replied. And I want you to get proper recognition for your work. The thought of presenting at a major conference sent a wave of anxiety through Maya. I don't have any experience with that kind of thing. I wouldn't know what to say or how to act. Alexander crossed the room, stopping closer to her than was strictly necessary. You'll be wonderful, he said softly. Just be yourself. Something in his tone made Maya look up. His gaze was warm, appreciative in a way that went beyond professional admiration. She stepped back slightly, needing space to think clearly. I can't leave town right now, she said. My mother, I've already arranged for additional care at her facility during our absence, Alexander interrupted. The best nurses, round-the-clock attention. Maya stared at him, caught between gratitude and discomfort. You did that without asking me? Alexander had the grace to look slightly abashed. I should have consulted you first. I apologize. Yes, you should have, Maya said firmly. I appreciate the gesture, but my mother's care is my responsibility. I understand. He maintained eye contact, his expression earnest. But will you still consider coming to the conference? It's important for your career, and, frankly, I could use your support. The admission of need from this powerful man was unexpected and disarming. Maya found herself nodding. All right, I'll come. But in the future, please discuss things with me before making arrangements. A smile spread across Alexander's face, transforming his usually serious features. Thank you, and I promise no more unilateral decisions. The week before the conference was hectic. Maya worked long hours finalizing the presentation while also keeping up with her regular projects. Alexander was equally busy, often sequestered in meetings with investors and board members. They saw each other only briefly, usually late in the evening when most of the office had emptied. During one such evening, Maya was hunched over her computer, rubbing her tired eyes, when Alexander appeared in her doorway. You're working too hard, he said, entering without invitation and setting a cup of coffee on her desk. You need to rest. Says the man who's here just as late as I am, Maya replied, gratefully accepting the coffee. She took a sip and raised her eyebrows. How did you know how I take my coffee? Alexander smiled slightly. I pay attention. The comment shouldn't have made her heart race, but it did. The realization that he noticed such small details about her was both flattering and unsettling. The presentation is nearly ready, she said, redirecting the conversation to safer ground. I just need to simplify some of the technical explanations for the non-specialist audience. Alexander moved to stand behind her, leaning over her shoulder to look at the screen. His cologne, subtle, expensive, enveloped her, and she was acutely aware of his proximity. May I? He asked, gesturing to the keyboard. Maya nodded, moving aside to give him access. Their shoulders brushed as he leaned in, making a few quick edits to the presentation. His fingers moved confidently across the keys, his expression focused. There, he said after a few minutes. What do you think? The changes were excellent, clearer, more concise, without sacrificing the substance of her work. It's perfect, Maya admitted. Like our partnership, Alexander said, his voice low. He was still close, too close for comfort. Yet Maya found herself reluctant to move away. Something was building between them, something that went far beyond professional collaboration. The moment was broken by the buzz of Alexander's phone. He straightened, checking the message with a frown. The board chairman, he explained. I need to take this. Get some rest, Maya. Tomorrow's another long day. After he left, Maya sat in the lingering scent of his cologne, trying to sort through her confused feelings. Alexander Archer was her boss, her mentor, a billionaire CEO with power and influence she could barely comprehend. Any personal involvement with him would be complicated at best, disastrous at worst. Yet she couldn't deny the connection between them. Intellectual, certainly, but increasingly personal as well. The way his eyes sought hers in meetings, the casual touches that seemed to linger longer than necessary, the late nights, working side by side that felt almost intimate. Elena's warning echoed in her mind. Men like that, rich, powerful, they're used to getting what they want. Was that all this was? A powerful man's passing interest in a novelty, the cleaning woman with the mathematical mind? The thought was like a cold shower, dampening the warmth that had been building in her chest. Maya gathered her things and headed home, determined to maintain professional boundaries. She needed this job, this opportunity. She couldn't risk it for something as uncertain as attraction. The morning of their departure for San Francisco, Maya met Alexander in the lobby of Archer Industries. He was dressed casually in dark jeans and a blue sweater that matched his eyes, looking younger and more approachable than he did in his usual suits. Ready for your first corporate trip? He asked, taking her small suitcase and handing it to the driver who waited by a sleek black car. "As ready as I'll ever be," Maya replied, smoothing her hand over her new blazer. She'd used her first paycheck to buy a few professional outfits, wanting to look the part of a corporate mathematician rather than a woman playing dress-up. The drive to the airport was quiet, both of them reviewing notes on their tablets. At the terminal, Maya expected to check in with the regular passengers, but Alexander led her past the main counters to a private entrance. "We're flying private?" Maya asked, unable to keep the surprise from her voice. "It's more efficient," Alexander replied with a shrug, "and it gives us time to prepare without interruptions." The private jet was luxurious but understated, with comfortable leather seats and a small conference table. Maya tried not to look too impressed as she settled into a seat by the window. "First time on a private plane?" Alexander asked, noticing her wide eyes. "First time on any plane," Maya admitted. "I've never been outside of New Mexico and California before." Something like sadness flickered across Alexander's face. "Sometimes I forget how different our experiences have been." During the flight, they focused on work, refining their presentation and discussing potential questions from the audience. The easy intellectual rapport they'd developed over the past weeks made the time pass quickly. By the time they landed in San Francisco, Maya felt prepared and surprisingly calm. The conference was being held at an upscale hotel near the bay. As their car pulled up to the entrance, Maya was struck by the opulence of the place, all marble and glass, with uniformed staff rushing to open doors and take luggage. "We have rooms on the executive floor," Alexander told her as they approached the check-in desk. "You'll be right next door to me in case you need anything." The proximity made Maya nervous, but she nodded, accepting the key card from the receptionist. Her room was more luxurious than any place she'd ever stayed. A spacious suite with a stunning view of the bay, fresh flowers on the coffee table, and a bottle of champagne chilling in an ice bucket. There was a connecting door to the adjacent room, Alexander's room, locked from both sides. Maya eyed it warily before unpacking her things. The conference began that evening with a welcome reception. Maya wore her best dress, a simple black sheath that she hoped looked sophisticated enough for the occasion. When she emerged from her room, Alexander was waiting in the hallway. He looked striking in a charcoal suit, his dark hair perfectly styled. "You look beautiful," he said, his eyes warming as they took in her appearance. "Thank you," Maya replied, fighting a blush. "I wasn't sure what would be appropriate." "You're perfect," Alexander assured her, offering his arm. "Shall we?" The reception was held in a grand ballroom filled with technology executives, investors, and engineers. Maya felt out of place among these powerful people in their expensive clothes, discussing deals worth millions as casually as if they were talking about the weather. Alexander seemed to sense her discomfort. He kept her close, introducing her to key industry figures with obvious pride. "This is Maya Rodriguez, the mathematical genius behind our new AI framework," he would say, his hand warm at the small of her back. Many were polite but dismissive, their eyes sliding past her to Alexander. Others, recognizing her name from the conference program, engaged her in genuine conversation about her work. A few, mostly older men with appraising gazes, looked between her and Alexander with knowing smirks that made her skin crawl. "Don't let them bother you," Alexander murmured after one such interaction. "They can't imagine that I value you for your mind." "And is that all you value me for?" Maya asked before she could stop herself. Alexander's eyes darkened. "No," he said simply. "Not all." The admission hung between them, charged with possibility. Before either could say more, they were interrupted by a loud voice. "Alex Archer, I thought that was you." A tall, elegantly dressed woman approached, her smile brilliant but cold. She was beautiful in a polished, intimidating way, all sharp angles and perfect poise. "Victoria," Alexander greeted her, his expression carefully neutral. "I didn't know you'd be here." "Clearly," she replied, her gaze sliding to Maya with undisguised curiosity. "Aren't you going to introduce me to your colleague?" "Of course. Maya Rodriguez. This is Victoria Blackwood, CEO of Blackwood Technologies." "And Alex's ex-fiancée," Victoria added, extending a manicured hand to Maya. "Though he seems to have forgotten that part." Maya shook her hand, feeling as though she'd stepped into a minefield. "It's nice to meet you." Victoria and I were engaged briefly 2 years ago, Alexander explained, his tone clipped. It didn't work out. Didn't work out is a polite way of saying he was married to his company and had no time for a relationship, Victoria said with a brittle laugh. A warning for you, dear. Maya and I are colleagues, Alexander said firmly. She's a brilliant mathematician who's revolutionizing our AI systems. Victoria's perfectly shaped eyebrows rose. Is that what they're calling it these days? Maya felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment and anger. If you'll excuse me, she said stiffly, I need some air. She walked away quickly, weaving through the crowd toward the terrace doors. The cool evening air was a relief after the stuffy ballroom. Maya leaned against the railing, trying to calm her racing heart. A few minutes later, Alexander joined her, his expression apologetic. I'm sorry about that. Victoria can be difficult. She seems to think we're involved, Maya said, unable to keep the edge from her voice. Victoria sees what she wants to see. Alexander moved to stand beside her, looking out at the bay. Our engagement ended badly. She's still bitter. Why did it end? Maya asked, then shook her head. I'm sorry. That's none of my business. No, it's a fair question. Alexander was quiet for a moment. Victoria was right about one thing. I was obsessed with my company. But what she never understood was why. He turned to face Maya, his expression serious. My father built Archer Industries from nothing. When he died, it was struggling. Everyone expected it to fail under my leadership. Proving them wrong became my life's mission. And you succeeded, Maya said softly, at the cost of everything else. His eyes held hers. Victoria wanted a trophy husband who would support her social ambitions. When she realized I wasn't that man, she tried to change me. When that failed, she left. I'm sorry, Maya said, genuinely sympathetic despite her lingering discomfort. Don't be. It was for the best. Alexander's hand moved to cover hers on the railing. If I'd married Victoria, I would never have found you. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Maya's heart pounded in her chest. She should pull away, maintain professional boundaries, but something in his eyes kept her rooted to the spot. Alexander, she began, not sure what she wanted to say. It's more than your mind, Maya, he said quietly. Though that was what first captivated me. It's your determination, your integrity. The way you gave up everything for your mother. The way you challenged me without fear. His fingers interlaced with hers, warm and strong. I've never met anyone like you. Maya knew she should end this now, before it complicated everything. But the truth was, she'd never met anyone like Alexander either. Behind the powerful CEO was a man of surprising depth and vulnerability, a man who saw her, truly saw her, when others had overlooked her for years. We should go back inside, she said finally, gently withdrawing her hand. People will talk. Let them, Alexander replied. But he didn't try to stop her as she moved toward the doors. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of introductions and small talk. Maya was hyper-aware of Alexander's presence nearby, of the occasional brush of his hand against her back, of the way his eyes sought hers across the room. By the time they returned to their rooms, she was exhausted from the emotional tension as much as the social demands. Try to get some rest, Alexander said as they reached their doors. Tomorrow's the big presentation. I will, Maya promised, swiping her key card. Before she could enter, Alexander caught her hand. Maya, he said softly, what's happening between us? I want you to know it has nothing to do with your position at the company. Whether or not you feel the same way, your job is secure. The assurance should have been comforting, but it only highlighted the power imbalance between them. Thank you, she said, gently pulling her hand away. Good night, Alexander. Inside her room, Maya leaned against the door, her emotions in turmoil. She was attracted to Alexander. How could she not be? He was brilliant, driven, surprisingly vulnerable at times. And he seemed genuinely interested in her, not just as a mathematical asset but as a woman. Yet the complications were overwhelming. He was her boss, holding power over her career. They came from completely different worlds. And after tonight, it was clear that a relationship with him would mean scrutiny and judgment from others in the industry. Maya's phone buzzed with a text from Elena. "How's the conference? Any billionaire drama?" Maya smiled despite herself and called her friend instead of texting back. When Elena answered, the familiar voice was a comfort. "Tell me everything," Elena demanded after they'd exchanged greetings. Maya hesitated, then found herself pouring out the whole story. The private jet, the luxury hotel, Victoria's cutting remarks, and Alexander's confession on the terrace. "Wow," Elena said when Maya finally paused for breath. "That's a lot." "I know," Maya sighed. "What should I do?" "What do you want to do?" Elena countered. The question stopped Maya short. What did she want? For so long, her own desires had taken a back seat to necessity. Her mother's care, paying the bills, surviving. Now, faced with possibilities she'd never imagined, she wasn't sure how to answer. "I don't know," she admitted. "Part of me wants to see where this could go. He's unlike anyone I've ever met. But another part is terrified of the complications, of becoming gossip fodder, of risking this incredible professional opportunity." "Those are all valid concerns," Elena said thoughtfully. "But Maya, when was the last time you took a risk for yourself, not for someone else?" The question lingered in Maya's mind long after they'd said goodbye. When had she last done something purely for her own happiness? Perhaps it was time to consider what she wanted, what would fulfill her, rather than what was safe or expected. The next morning, Maya woke early, her mind clearer after a night's rest. Whatever was developing between her and Alexander, today she needed to focus on the presentation. This was her chance to establish herself professionally, to prove her worth to the industry beyond Alexander's endorsement. She dressed carefully in her new charcoal pantsuit, applied light makeup, and pulled her hair into a sleek bun. The woman in the mirror looked confident, professional, a far cry from the night janitor who had timidly entered Alexander's office just weeks ago. Alexander was already in the conference center when she arrived, reviewing their presentation on his tablet. He looked up as she approached, his eyes warming with appreciation. "You look ready to conquer the world," he said. "Just ready to talk about algorithmic optimization," Maya replied with a small smile, much less intimidating. Their presentation was scheduled for 10 a.m. in the main hall. As the time approached, the room filled with industry leaders and tech journalists. Maya's stomach knotted with nerves. "What if I freeze up there?" she whispered to Alexander as they waited backstage. He took her hand, squeezing it gently. "You won't. And if you do, I'll be right beside you. We're partners in this, remember?" The simple touch and reassurance calmed her. When they were introduced, Maya walked onto the stage with her head high, feeling Alexander's solid presence beside her. The presentation began with Alexander giving an overview of Archer Industries' AI vision. Then he introduced Maya, his voice filled with genuine respect. "Our breakthrough came when mathematician Maya Rodriguez joined our team," he told the audience. "Her innovative approach to neural network optimization has revolutionized our entire framework. I'm honored to introduce her to share the technical details of this advancement." As Maya took center stage, she felt a moment of panic. The audience, hundreds of faces, blurred before her. But then she looked at her first slide, filled with the elegant mathematics she loved, and began to speak. The words flowed easily as she explained her approach, her passion for the subject overcoming her nerves. She fielded complex questions with confidence, her mind sharp and focused. When she finished, the applause was enthusiastic and genuine. "You were magnificent," Alexander told her as they left the stage. His eyes shone with pride and something deeper, something that made her pulse quicken. The rest of the day passed in a whirlwind of technical sessions and networking opportunities. Industry leaders who had ignored Maya at the reception now sought her out, eager to discuss her work. Several even offered her their business cards, mentioning potential collaboration opportunities. "Don't even think about poaching her," Alexander told one persistent CEO, his tone light but with an underlying firmness. "Maya is an essential part of our team." By evening, Maya was exhausted but exhilarated. She had proven herself on her own merits, earned recognition based on her mind rather than her connection to Alexander. It was a validation she hadn't realized she needed so desperately. The conference concluded with a formal dinner and award ceremony. Maya wore her one evening dress, a simple blue gown she'd bought years ago for a cousin's wedding. It was far from designer quality, but it fit well and brought out the gold flecks in her brown eyes. When she emerged from her room, Alexander was waiting as he had the night before. This time, his reaction was different. A sharp intake of breath, his eyes darkening as they took in her appearance. "You are breathtaking," he said, his voice low. Maya felt a blush warm her cheeks. "Thank you. You look quite handsome yourself." It was an understatement. In his tuxedo, Alexander was striking, powerful, elegant, commanding. The dinner was held in a different ballroom, transformed with candlelight and floral arrangements. They were seated at a table with other industry leaders, and throughout the meal, Maya found herself engaged in stimulating conversations about mathematics and AI ethics. What surprised her most was how comfortable she felt. Just weeks ago, she would have been intimidated by these powerful people. Now she held her own, confident in her knowledge and expertise. "You've changed," Alexander murmured as they watched the awards presentations. "You carry yourself differently." "I feel different," Maya admitted. "More like myself somehow, the self I was meant to be before life got in the way." His hand found hers under the table, fingers intertwining. This time, Maya didn't pull away. Whatever was happening between them, she was no longer the vulnerable night janitor he'd discovered through security cameras. She was his intellectual equal, increasingly recognized in her own right. After the ceremony, they walked back to their rooms in comfortable silence, hands still linked. At her door, Maya hesitated, the keycard in her free hand. "Thank you for bringing me here," she said softly, "for giving me this opportunity." "You earned it," Alexander replied. "Your talent, your mind, they belong in the light, not hidden away in night shifts and thankless jobs." He was standing close, too close for professionalism, but Maya didn't step back. The attraction between them had been building for weeks, intensifying, with each shared breakthrough, each late-night conversation, each moment of understanding that passed between them like a current. "Maya," Alexander said, his voice rough with emotion, "I need to know if this is just me, if these feelings are one-sided." The vulnerability in his question, this powerful man asking for reassurance, touched something deep within her. The careful walls she'd built began to crumble. "It's not just you," she whispered. The admission hung in the air between them, changing everything. Alexander's hand came up to cup her cheek, his touch gentle, questioning. Maya leaned into it, her eyes closing briefly at the contact. When his lips met hers, the kiss was soft at first, tentative. Then Maya's arms slid around his neck, and the kiss deepened, becoming something urgent and necessary, as if they'd both been starving for this connection. They broke apart, breathless, foreheads touching. "Come to my room," Alexander murmured. "Just to talk. I want to know everything about you. Your dreams, your fears, what makes you laugh." The sincerity in his voice made Maya's heart ache. This wasn't about power or conquest. It was about genuine connection, rare and precious. "Yes," she said simply, and followed him through his door, crossing a threshold that would change both their lives forever. Maya woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar curtains. For a moment she was disoriented. Then memories of the previous night came flooding back. Alexander's suite. Hours of conversation that had stretched until dawn. The vulnerability in his eyes as he shared stories of his childhood. A privileged but lonely existence as the son of a demanding father. The way he'd listened, really listened, as she described her dreams of finishing her PhD and using mathematics to solve real-world problems. They had talked, just as he'd promised. Nothing more. When exhaustion finally overtook them, he'd offered her the bed while he took the sofa in the adjoining sitting room. A gentleman's gesture that had surprised and touched her. Now, Maya slipped quietly from the bed, gathering her shoes. Alexander was still asleep on the sofa, one arm flung above his head, his face younger and more peaceful in slumber. She paused, taking in the sight of him, this powerful man who had watched her through security cameras and changed her life. In her own room, Maya showered and changed, her mind racing. What happened now? They were returning to Seattle today, back to the reality of Archer Industries, where he was the CEO and she was an employee with a 3-month trial period. Could they navigate that complexity? Should they even try? Her phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. It was the care facility where her mother lived. "Ms. Rodriguez?" "This is Nurse Jenkins. Your mother had a difficult night. She's asking for you." Maya's heart sank. Is she all right? Physically, yes. But she's confused, agitated. The additional care Mr. Archer arranged has been helpful, but she's insisting on seeing you. I'll be there as soon as I can, Maya promised. I'm flying back to Seattle today. After hanging up, Maya sat on the edge of the bed, worry replacing her earlier confusion. Her mother's condition had been stable recently, but Alzheimer's was unpredictable. Good days could turn bad without warning. A knock at the connecting door made her look up. Maya, Alexander called. Are you all right? She crossed the room and opened the door. Alexander stood there, hair still tousled from sleep, concern evident in his eyes. My mother isn't doing well, Maya explained. I need to get back to Seattle as soon as possible. Alexander's response was immediate. I'll have the jet ready in an hour. We can be back by early afternoon. Thank you, Maya said, genuine gratitude in her voice. Whatever complications existed between them, his willingness to prioritize her needs meant more than she could express. They were in the air by 10 a.m., the conference forgotten in Maya's worry for her mother. Alexander sat beside her, occasionally squeezing her hand in silent support, but giving her space to process her concerns. Tell me about her, he said as they crossed over Nevada. Your mother. Maya looked up from the window, surprised by the request. She is the strongest person I know, she began. A nurse for 30 years, always taking the toughest shifts so she could be home when I got back from school. After my father died, she somehow held everything together, never letting me see how much she was hurting. She sounds remarkable, Alexander said softly. She is. Even now, with the disease taking more of her each day, there are moments when I see her, the real her, shining through. Maya's voice caught. That's the cruelest part. Those glimpses of who she was, appearing and disappearing like a light flickering out. Alexander's hand tightened around hers. I'm sorry, Maya. I wish I could fix this for you. The simple acknowledgement that he couldn't, this man who is used to solving problems with money and influence, touched her deeply. Thank you for understanding. When they landed in Seattle, a car was waiting to take them directly to the care facility. Alexander insisted on accompanying her. You shouldn't be alone, he said when she protested. Let me be there for you. The facility was located in a quiet suburb, its gardens carefully maintained to create a peaceful environment for residents. Maya had chosen it for its specialized Alzheimer's care, though the cost had strained her finances to the breaking point before her new job. At the reception desk, the staff greeted Maya warmly. She's been asking for you all morning, the nurse explained, leading them down a sunny hallway. The agitation has decreased, but she's still quite confused. Maya paused outside her mother's room, turning to Alexander. She may not make sense, and she probably won't remember who you are from one moment to the next. I understand, he assured her. Elena Rodriguez sat in a chair by the window, a blanket over her knees, despite the warm day. At 63, she still retained traces of the beauty she'd once possessed, though the disease had aged her prematurely. She looked up as Maya entered, her face lighting with recognition. Maya, there you are. I've been waiting for you to come home from school. Maya's heart twisted. Her mother's mind had slipped back decades, to a time when Maya was still a child. Hi, Mom, she said gently, kneeling beside the chair. How are you feeling today? Tired, Elena replied. I worked a double shift. Mrs. Patel's baby came early. She frowned suddenly, noticing Alexander hovering near the door. Who's that man? Is he from the hospital? This is my friend Alexander, Maya explained, gesturing him closer. He wanted to meet you. Alexander approached with uncharacteristic hesitation, his usual confidence subdued. It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Rodriguez. Elena studied him with surprising clarity. You care about my daughter. It wasn't a question, but Alexander answered anyway. Very much. A smile spread across Elena's face. Good. She deserves someone who sees how special she is. Then, as quickly as the lucidity had appeared, it vanished. Maya, did you finish your homework? Your father will be home soon. For the next hour, Maya sat with her mother, talking about whatever time period Elena's mind had settled in, gently redirecting when confusion threatened to turn to distress. Alexander remained nearby, watching their interaction with quiet attentiveness. When a nurse came to take Elena for her afternoon therapy session, Maya walked her mother to the door, promising to return soon. As they left, Alexander paused in the hallway. "She's extraordinary," he said. "I see where you get your strength." Maya's eyes filled with unexpected tears at the simple observation. "Thank you for coming with me. Where else would I be?" The question was rhetorical, but it highlighted the shift in their relationship. In just days, they had moved from boss and employee to something much more personal, something that involved being present in the hardest moments. As they drove back to the city, Maya was quiet, processing the visit. Alexander respected her silence, making calls to reschedule meetings and handle pressing business matters without involving her. Finally, as they neared her apartment building, Maya turned to him. "I need some time," she said, "to think about everything. My mother, the job, us. It's all happening so fast." Alexander nodded, his expression serious. "I understand. Take whatever time you need." He hesitated, then added, "But Maya, know this. What I feel for you isn't going to change. When you're ready, I'll be here." The simple declaration, free of pressure or demand, reassured her more than any elaborate promise could have. "Thank you," she said softly. The next week passed in a blur of work and visits to her mother. Maya threw herself into her projects at Archer Industries, finding solace in the clean logic of mathematics. Alexander kept his distance professionally, treating her with the same respect he showed all his senior staff, though his eyes often sought hers across conference rooms, and his hand would occasionally brush hers when they exchanged documents. The conference presentation had elevated Maya's status within the company. Engineers who had once dismissed her now sought her input on projects. Victoria in marketing, who had been particularly cold, approached her with reluctant admiration. "Your work on the neural network has generated more industry buzz than anything we've done in years," she admitted during a project meeting. "The board is impressed." "I'm just doing my job," Maya replied, uncomfortable with the attention. "From what I hear, you're doing much more than that," Victoria said with a knowing glance toward Alexander's office. The implication was clear, and it stung. No matter how brilliant her work, some would always attribute her success to her personal relationship with the CEO. The thought was disheartening. That evening, as Maya prepared to leave, Alexander appeared in her doorway. "May I walk you out?" In the elevator, they stood in silence until Alexander spoke. "You've been avoiding me." "I've been busy," Maya corrected, "and I asked for time." "Of course." He studied her face. "Is everything all right? You seem troubled." Maya hesitated, then decided on honesty. "I overheard some comments today. About us. About why I'm really here." Alexander's expression hardened. "Who said what?" "It doesn't matter who. What matters is that no matter what I achieve, some people will always believe I earned it on my back, rather than with my mind." The words were bitter, the frustration of a lifetime of being underestimated spilling over. "Maya," Alexander's voice was gentle but firm, "you can't control what others think, but you can prove them wrong every single day, with every piece of brilliant work you do. And you are brilliant." "I know my worth," Maya said, "but I also know how the world works. Women like me don't usually end up in positions like this, or with men like you." "Women like you?" Alexander questioned. "From the wrong side of town, without the right connections or credentials, cleaning offices instead of running them." Alexander stepped closer, his eyes intense. "That's exactly why I want you. Not despite where you come from, but because of it. Because you fought for everything you have. Because you see problems differently than people who've had everything handed to them." The elevator reached the ground floor, and they walked out into the cool evening air. Alexander continued, "When I watched you solve that first equation on my whiteboard, I didn't see a cleaning woman. I saw a mind that thinks in ways mine never could. That's rare, Maya. Priceless." His words soothed some of the hurt, but the practical concerns remained. "And what happens when this doesn't work out? When the novelty wears off? I'll still need this job. Is that what you think this is? Novelty?" Alexander stopped walking, turning to face her fully. "Maya, I've built my entire career on recognizing value others miss. What I see in you isn't temporary or superficial." He ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of frustration. "But if you need reassurance, I've already arranged for your position to report directly to the board, not to me." Your professional future is secure, regardless of our personal relationship. The revelation surprised Maya. You did that? When? After San Francisco. I knew you were worried about the complications. He smiled slightly. I told you I was learning. The thoughtfulness of the gesture, protecting her autonomy without being asked, touched Maya deeply. Perhaps he truly did understand her concerns, her need for independence. I should go, she said, though with less urgency than before. I promised to call my mother before bed. Alexander nodded. Of course. But Maya, when you've had enough time, I'd like to take you to dinner. Properly, away from work and conferences and complications. Just the two of us. The simplicity of the request made her smile. I'd like that. That weekend, Maya spent the day with her mother, who was having a rare good day. They sat in the facility's garden, Elena lucid enough to ask about Maya's new job. You look different, her mother observed, studying Maya's face with surprising clarity. Happier. I am, Mom, Maya admitted. I'm doing work I love again, using my mind the way you and Dad always encouraged me to. And is there someone? Elena asked, her intuition still sharp despite the disease's ravages. A man? Maya hesitated, then nodded. Maybe. It's complicated. Love always is, her mother said with the wisdom of experience. But complications aren't always bad things, Mija. They're just problems to solve, and you've always been good at that. The simple observation stayed with Maya as she drove home. She'd spent her life solving problems. Mathematical puzzles, financial struggles, the logistics of caring for a parent with a degenerative disease. Why should her relationship with Alexander be any different? That evening, she called him. Dinner, she said when he answered. I'd like that. Tomorrow night? His smile was audible in his voice. Tomorrow night. Alexander picked her up at her apartment, arriving precisely on time, dressed casually in jeans and a blue sweater rather than his usual business attire. He'd brought flowers, not roses, but a colorful arrangement of wildflowers that reminded Maya of the garden where she'd sat with her mother. These are beautiful, she said, touched by the thoughtfulness of the gesture. They reminded me of you, Alexander replied. Vibrant, unexpected, natural. He took her to a small Italian restaurant tucked away in a quiet neighborhood, far from the upscale establishments where he might be recognized. The owner greeted Alexander by name, leading them to a private table in a back corner. You come here often? Maya asked as they settled in. When I want to be just Alexander, not CEO Archer, he admitted. Giovanni doesn't care about stock prices or quarterly earnings. He just cares if I enjoy his food. The meal was extraordinary. Handmade pasta, fresh seafood, wine from the owner's family vineyard in Tuscany. But more remarkable was the conversation. Away from the office, away from the complications of their professional relationship, they talked about everything and nothing. Books they loved, places they wanted to visit, childhood memories both good and bad. I used to think my father was the model I should emulate, Alexander said as they lingered over dessert. Driven, successful, respected. It wasn't until after he died that I realized how little he'd actually lived. Always chasing the next deal, the next acquisition. Is that why you became so focused on the company? Maya asked. To honor his legacy? Alexander considered the question, partly, but also to prove I could do it better, be successful without sacrificing everything else. He smiled ruefully. Though I haven't exactly succeeded at that balance until recently. What changed? Maya asked, though she suspected she knew the answer. I found something, someone, who made me remember there's more to life than quarterly reports and board meetings. His eyes held hers. Someone who made me feel alive again. The simple honesty of his words touched her deeply. This wasn't the practiced charm of a wealthy man used to getting his way. This was raw, genuine emotion from someone who had likely been taught from childhood to conceal such vulnerabilities. After dinner, they walked along the waterfront, the city lights reflecting on the dark water. Alexander took her hand, his fingers warm against the cool evening air. Maya, he said finally, stopping to face her. I know this is complicated. I know there are 1,000 reasons why we shouldn't work. But I've never been more certain of anything than I am of what I feel for you. And what is that? Maya asked, needing to hear the words. Love, he said simply. I'm in love with you. Not with your mind, though it's extraordinary. Not with your beauty, though you take my breath away. With you, all of you, exactly as you are. The declaration hung in the air between them, Honest and unadorned, Maya's heart raced, emotion she'd been holding at bay finally breaking through her carefully constructed defenses. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Not of you, but of what loving you might mean. Your world is so different from mine. Then we'll build a new world," Alexander said, pulling her closer. "One that includes the best of both." When he kissed her, it felt like coming home, to a home she hadn't known she was searching for. All the doubts, all the complications seemed to fade, if only for that moment. In the weeks that followed, they navigated their new relationship with care and intention. At work, they maintained professional boundaries, with Maya reporting to the board as Alexander had arranged. After hours, they explored their connection, learning each other's histories, dreams, and fears. Alexander introduced Maya to his world gradually: elegant restaurants, charity galas, cultural events she'd never had access to before. But he also embraced hers, joining her for simple dinners in her apartment, visits to her mother, even helping her volunteer at the community center where she tutored underprivileged students in mathematics. "You're good with them," Maya observed one Saturday as she watched Alexander patiently explaining an algebra concept to a struggling teenager. "I wouldn't have expected that." "Why not?" he asked, genuinely curious. "Most billionaires don't spend their weekends in community centers in the roughest part of town." Alexander smiled. "Most billionaires haven't found someone worth following into the roughest part of town." 3 months into their relationship, Maya's trial period at Archer Industries came up for review. The board meeting was scheduled for a Monday morning, and despite Alexander's assurances, Maya was nervous. "They'd be fools not to make your position permanent," he told her the night before as they sat on his terrace, watching the sunset. "Your work has transformed our AI capabilities." "It's not just about the work," Maya replied. "It's about perception, about our relationship." Alexander took her hand. "The board knows about us. I've been transparent from the beginning. But they also know your value to the company is independent of your relationship with me." The next morning, Maya sat before the board, 12 men and women who controlled the fate of her career. Alexander was absent, having recused himself due to their personal involvement. The chairman, a distinguished woman in her 60s, led the questioning. "Ms. Rodriguez, your technical contributions are undeniable. The improvements to our neural network algorithms have positioned Archer Industries at the forefront of AI development." "Thank you," Maya replied, trying to project confidence. "However," the chairman continued, "there are concerns about your unusual path to this position and your personal relationship with our CEO. Maya had anticipated this. My path may be unconventional, but it's given me a perspective that's valuable to this company. As for my relationship with Alexander, with Mr. Archer, it developed after my contributions were already proven. My work stands on its own merits." The chairman smiled slightly. "Indeed it does. Which is why the board has unanimously voted to not only make your position permanent, but to create a new division of mathematical research with you as its director." Maya blinked in surprise. "I thank you." "Don't thank us," another board member interjected. "This isn't a favor or a courtesy to Alexander. This is a business decision based on your exceptional contributions." As Maya left the boardroom, her mind racing with possibilities for the new division, she found Alexander waiting in the hallway. The hope and anxiety in his expression told her he hadn't been certain of the outcome either. "Director of Mathematical Research," she told him, unable to keep the excitement from her voice. His face broke into a rare, unguarded smile, but he didn't embrace her as he might have in private. Here, they were still CEO and employee, maintaining the professional boundaries they'd established. "Congratulations," he said formally, though his eyes conveyed much more. "The company is fortunate to have you." That evening, they celebrated properly at his home, with champagne on the terrace overlooking the city where their unlikely story had begun. "To the new director," Alexander toasted, his eyes warm with pride. "To new beginnings," Maya countered, touching her glass to his. Later, as they stood at the railing watching the city lights, Alexander turned to her. "I have something for you." From his pocket, he produced a small velvet box. Maya's heart raced, but when she opened it, she found not a ring, but a key. "What's this?" she asked, confused. "The key to my private office," Alexander explained. where you can write on my whiteboard anytime you want. No more sneaking in during night shifts." The gesture made her laugh, then grow serious as she recognized its deeper meaning. He was giving her access to his most private space, inviting her fully into his world, not as an employee or even a girlfriend, but as an equal. "Thank you," she said, closing her hand around the key, "for seeing me when I was invisible, for valuing my mind when others dismissed it." Began when someone saw a problem differently. Alexander joined her, standing close but not touching. "What do you think?" he asked. "It's a bit dramatic," Maya replied with a smile, "but I like the message. That talent can be found anywhere? That appearances can be deceiving?" Alexander suggested. "That sometimes the most important things happen when no one is watching," Maya corrected. "Or at least, when you think no one is watching." Alexander smiled, his hand briefly touching hers before returning to his side. Here, in the public lobby, they maintained their professional distance. "I was watching," he said softly, "and it changed everything." As Maya headed to her office, now a spacious corner suite with her name on the door, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From night janitor to director, from struggling to make ends meet, to financial security, from loneliness to love. The path had been unexpected, complicated, filled with challenges both personal and professional. But as her mother had wisely observed, complications weren't always bad things. Sometimes they were just problems to solve. And solving problems was what Maya Rodriguez did best. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.